Get to the later rounds of your fantasy draft, you know what it's all about. You want to find that diamond in the rough, that potential league winner, breakout sleeper, whatever you call it. How about must have? These are guys we're drafting as much as possible, and you should too. But who are they? We're about to give you our picks, but let me remind you that if you want to know all of our rankings throughout draft season, in season, and access to our mock drafts where you see us play out these drafts in person, you can join us on flockfantasy.com/endgame. You get access to that mock draft channel where you can draft live with us on YouTube. You can also join actual endgame leagues and compete with us for money in real drafts. We also teach you how to win these drafts with our new draft nomination course coming soon, where we tell you the strategies that you need to know to win in any format. flockfantasy.com/endgame. All right, let's hear it. Who's your first pick for a late round gem that could pay off huge?
It pains me that I'm having to draft De'Von Achane this year. I wasn't a guy I liked as a prospect, severely undersized, but he landed in the perfect spot with the Dolphins here. And even though there's been a lot of rumors, Dalvin Cook or whoever coming to the Dolphins, it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. It just doesn't. It sounds like these are just rumors, which means he's going to be primed for a big year. Now, no, he's not going to be a guy who's going to get 15, 20 touches a week. If he does, he's not going to make it through the whole year. But in this offense, he only needs about 10 to 12 touches a week, because one thing about this guy, he is fast, like ridiculous fast. And we know this offense is built around speed. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, they don't beat defenses with their incredible, technique and things like that. Even though they do have good technique, they outspeed defenses, and it's hard to cover both these guys with the speed they have. And now you're adding this guy to the backfield. Teams can't worry about all three of these guys. You can't worry about, Tyreek Hill blowing by you. You can't worry about Jalen Waddle blowing by you, and worried about De'Von Achane blowing by you. Achane is going to have opportunities to hit a home run every single week he's on the field. And when you're talking about late round guys, that's what you're looking for. You're not trying to find somebody who can be a high floor, low end RB2 in this range. No, that doesn't help your team. You want somebody who can be a true difference maker. Put him in your lineup, as a flex or as a bye week fill in RB2, and he hits that 40, 50, 60-yard touchdown, and bang, you win your week just from that one play. That's what you want from these guys. That's what he gives you. So as long as they don't go out and sign a running back, which it doesn't sound like they're going to do, Achane will have plenty of big weeks this season. He's a guy I think you have to target in the late rounds of all your drafts.
No argument for me on that pick. But what if I told you that he's only my second favorite rookie running back in the state of Florida? Now, that's because, although I like Achane, I'm still big on Tank Bigsby. And I know all the Travis Etienne truthers will come out with their pitchforks and their torches and, whatever. It doesn't matter. Etienne will be fine. I'm not saying do not draft him, although I'm not drafting him too much. I think he'll be fine, but I think people will start to realize Bigsby is going to get a bigger share than you might have expected. Etienne is not going to be an every down back. He's just not. And that's partly because Bigsby is good and he was drafted to be that complementary back. But also, he's not just, despite the name, not just a tank who's going to be sitting there, on those short yardage, those goal line plays and just come in when it's 3rd and 1 and that's it. No, he's fast and he has good hands, and he will be used on early downs as well, and he's going to catch passes as well. In fact, one thing we've heard in training camp is he's shown off how good his hands are, and he also is good around the goal line. He scored plenty of touchdowns at Auburn. He's going to score plenty of touchdowns in Jacksonville, which looks like it might be one of the most improved offenses from last year to this next year. And there's going to be plenty of opportunity because they cannot throw the ball every time they get inside the red zone. They're going to need somebody who's going to help them out. Travis Etienne wasn't used in goal line situations last year. I don't really think that's going to change. You're going to see Tank get his share of touchdowns and his share of catches and his share of carries. So if you're looking for somebody who, I won't even call it handcuff, but a good complementary number 2 running back with room for more, Tank Bigsby is that guy for me. All right, who's another late round pick that you're all over?
Yeah, one of the wide receivers I keep drafting late over and over again is Van Jefferson. I talked about him in a recent video, but I'm going to talk about him again because this is a guy, after year 2, showed all the makings of what you want to see. The year 1 to year 2 leap was there. Over 800 yards, 6 touchdowns, but also when you look at him as a route runner, he could run most of the full route tree, which I don't think people think of him that way. They just think of him as like a burner, but he could do way more than just run the vertical routes, although he's very good at those too. And he also was good against various coverages. He was more than good enough against man, more than good enough against press, decent against zone. So he had the makings of a year 3 breakout. Unfortunately, had that knee injury to start the offseason, then had to have a procedure done on it. Didn't even get on the field until week 8. And then Matthew Stafford got hurt and the Rams offense fell apart, especially the passing game. And that was that. But now, going into year 4, he seems fully healthy. Matthew Stafford seems fully healthy. And we know one thing this team wants to do is throw the ball. Last year, in the games Matthew Stafford played, they were throwing at the 3rd highest rate of any team in the NFL. As long as Matthew Stafford is healthy and Sean McVay is a coach, they're going to throw the ball all the time. And yes, Cooper Kupp is going to get the majority of the targets. There's no doubt about that. But somebody else has to get targets. They can't all go to Cooper Kupp. I mean, maybe they can, but probably not. Somebody else will get targets, and I think Van Jefferson is going to be that guy because, again, he has a profile of a good number 2 NFL wide receiver. He just needed to be healthy. He's healthy now. He's going to have a full training camp with Stafford, with this offense, with McVay. I like Van Jefferson a ton this year, being completely slept on in this Rams offense. I mean, Cooper Kupp is a first-round pick, obviously, but Van Jefferson's like a 13th, 14th round pick. I mean, there's almost no risk here for potentially the number 2 wide receiver in this offense. Just be like me. Keep drafting Van Jefferson over and over again in the late part of your drafts.
How often can you get a team's number 2 receiver as a last round flyer? It's not too often. I'm going back to running back here, though. I mean, this is the way it is. You draft these guys late because running backs get hurt, and these days they just hold out or demand a trade. But you want that guy who could step up and have a huge role if called upon, but also might have a role anyway. So I'm talking about Jerome Ford in Cleveland, who a lot of people don't even know or remember because, well, basically he did nothing last year. Now, we know Kareem Hunt is gone, and yeah, if you say, well, he's going to assume the Kareem Hunt role, that means nothing because Kareem Hunt was terrible in fantasy last year and hardly did anything. So that alone isn't, the appeal here. It's 2 things. It's, first of all, yeah, the obvious that he's Nick Chubb's backup and anything that happens to Nick Chubb, then you have like Nick Chubb 2.0. Not that he's going to be as good as Nick Chubb, but he'll be the number 1 back in Cleveland, and that's a good thing. But also, he is going to take the backup RB role. And Jerome Ford is a guy, honestly, I was interested in a lot last year. I expected better things of him. Obviously, the coaching staff still held on to Hunt, and they didn't really give Ford much of a chance. He's got his chance. They did not add anybody despite losing Hunt because they believe in Jerome Ford, and he has good hands, and he's scored a lot of touchdowns in college. He's a guy who is a big and tough enough runner that he can, if called upon, get some of those short carries. And I think he's going to have a decent role. Now, obviously, you're not going to throw him in your starting lineup right away if nothing happens to Chubb. But there are few running backs late in the draft around where he's going, which is the last round because nobody's drafting him, that have his potential. So I like Ford. I think the opportunity might be there for him. And he's definitely one of those lotto tickets I'm going to take a chance on. All right, who else are you high on that is basically going free in drafts?
Talked about a lot of rookie wide receivers this offseason. Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, even Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnston. But it's time we start talking about Marvin Mims, who I did like, at least long term. I liked him as a player. I liked him as a prospect. Landed in Denver. Didn't really see a path for him. But unfortunately, there is now a path for him because Tim Patrick likely just tore his Achilles in practice. Coming off that ACL injury, he's going to miss the entire season. Maybe career ending, to be honest, at his age. But this does open up the door for Marvin Mims as the clear number 3 wide receiver now. This is a guy, he's a good vertical deep threat, and that is something they don't really have because Sutton does do some things well, but he's never been a good separator on those deep routes. Judy, he can kind of run the deep routes. I mean, it's kind of more his strength than some other routes, but this is what Marvin Mims really does. I think he's going to be the field stretcher in this offense, in that Tim Patrick role, which with Russell Wilson, if Sean Payton can get Russell Wilson back even close to what he was, we saw back in the day, Russell Wilson was one of the best deep ball throwers in the entire NFL. So if he can get him back close to that, that's going to be so good for Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims may not come out of the gate hot. He may be one of those guys you draft at the last pick, and then you're sitting there like, you know, that meme where you're kicking the stone, kind of like, come on, do something. But that's what you get with these rookie wide receivers. You got to give them time as the season goes on, as Sean Payton gets confidence in him, as his snaps goes up. That is when he can start paying off, and that's really when you need him. So grab him in the late rounds of your draft, stash him on your bench. Don't lose patience and drop him, because somebody will eventually pick him up off the waiver wire later in the season. And this could be a guy, one of those rookie wide receivers who late in the season that comes out of nowhere and starts helping teams win championships, because the path is there for Marvin Mims now.
All right, so let's take everything you just said and apply it to another Bronco who I've been high on. And you know what? I think you mentioned him before I did, even this offseason. We're both fans of Greg Dulcich at tight end. Now, you heard us say this, if you don't go early at tight end, meaning a Kelsey Andrews elite tight end, then you might as well just wait. Well, if I'm waiting, here's who I'm taking. It's going to be Greg Dulcich. There's a couple other tight ends I'm kind of interested in, but some of those guys, their appeal has just fallen off. And Dulcich, if anything, it's gone up now. You mentioned the Patrick injury. Sean Payton, I mean, I'm not convinced necessarily just yet that he's a miracle worker. Let's see it happen, right? But Russell Wilson, we know, I mean, last year was not him, and it was not what we're going to see this year. And we've heard some reports, not to throw Nathaniel Hackett under the bus too much, but it was something along the lines of that was like the worst coaching job in NFL history, something like that. Okay, I think it's clear that Russell Wilson will have a better season, and Greg Dulcich is going to be in store for a big role. Heard all this stuff about that joker position Peyton likes to use. Going to move him around the field. He's going to get targets. Look, there's not that many tight ends that you can get in the later rounds of your draft that you can, number one, feel comfortable as your number one tight end, but also feel like he's ready for a breakout, a full-fledged, I'm one of the best tight ends in fantasy kind of seasons breakout. Dulcich fits that bill. He's athletic. He's a receiving first type of tight end. He's in an offense that we know will focus on the tight end. And like you said, beyond Sutton and Judy, who, the jury's still kind of out on whether these guys are really elite receivers in the NFL, Dulcich is going to be most likely the number 3 target. So everything is in place for him. If I'm waiting on tight end, this is the guy I'm going to over and over again. Those are our favorite late round picks. What about the middle rounds? Well, if you missed that video, these are our must-haves in that range.